بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد, continuing in Riyadh al-Salihin, the chapter of vigilance of Allah's observation authored by Al-Hafidh al-Muhaddith al-Faqih Al-Humam Abu Zakaria Yahya ibn Sharaf al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala. He mentions the 9th narration in this chapter. This narration is on the authority of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال. Umar, his kunya is what? His kunya? Abu Hafsa, yes, correct. And his date of death, radiyallahu anhu, which year did he pass away? 12 and change, yeah, so. Man, you're so close. What'd you say? 10? Come on, man. So, 14 after Hijrah? So he lived 4 years after the Prophet's death, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. How long was his khilafah? 12 years. Okay, his khilafah was 10 years. 10 years long, along with 2.5 years of Abu Bakr's khilafah, 10 years and change, roughly 23 after Hijrah. 23 after Hijrah, he died at 63. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam died at 63. Abu Bakr died at 63. Umar died at 63. Radiyallahu anhum. Umar ibn al-Khattab, Abu Hafs, he narrates that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, لا يسأل الرجل فيما ضرب امرأته. رواه أبو داود وغيره. This narration was collected by Abu Dawood, which translates roughly to, a man is not to be asked about his reprimand of his wife. Now, this narration is not an authentic narration. It has weakness in its chain, similar to the weakness found in the narration of Abu Bakr ibn Abi Maryam that we took before. Al-Kayyisu man dana nafsahu wa amila lima ba'da al-maut. 2 narrations in the same chapter which are weak. This weakness is slight, but notice what An-Nawawi says here. I'm going to give you this point, and I want you to remember it, okay? If we were to say, what are the 6 references of hadith? What are the 6, what are referred to as ummat al-kutub al-hadith? The references of the books of hadith. Al-ummat al-sitta, or al-ummahat al-sitta. What are they? Can we mention them? List them? Al-Bukhari, Muslim, At-Tirmidhi, Abu Dawood, An-Nasa'i. No. Ibn Majah. Sunan Ibn Majah. Okay. So those are the 6 books. If you hear a scholar say the 7 books, it includes Musnad al-Imam Ahmad. If you hear them say the 8 books, it includes Muwatta al-Imam Malik. But usually it is the 6 books. Okay. These 6 books, why are they called the 6 mother books of hadith, or the 6 references, or the six references? The reason is when we take all the narrations in these books, And we take all of the mutun, meaning the words that are ascribed as being the Prophet's words, the Prophet's actions, the Prophet's anything having to do with him. It becomes part of the Sunnah. And we remove repetition, okay? And we remove chains of narration. This gives us the bulk majority of all of the Prophet's Sunnah. Not all of it. Not every last narration. Not every last statement or action. But the bulk majority. Okay? This makes up the bulk majority of the Prophet's Sunnah. The first scholar to consider these 6 books in this way is Al-Hafidh al-Maqdisi, rahimahullah ta'ala. And after that, all of the scholars followed in suit. Now, these books are not all authentic compilations. Books of hadith are of different types. Imagine tools. You have a ratchet, you have a hammer, you have a screwdriver, you have a Phillips, you have sockets, you have wrenches, you have, okay? These books have different roles that they fill. The author intended this to be a tool for a specific task. Bukhari and Muslim are authentic compilations. What does that mean? It means Bukhari, rahimahullah, he compiled in his book every narration in that book, he is grading as authentic. Muslim did the same thing. Everything in this book is authentic according to the following set of criteria. Now, the rest of the Sunan, Sunan al-Nasa'i, Sunan Abi Dawud, Sunan al-Tirmidhi, Sunan Ibn Majah, these are a different type of book. These books are referred to as Sunan. What is a book of Sunan? It's a type of book of hadith. Book of Sunan is a book that essentially deals with ahkam, rulings. Okay? Rulings. Wudu, salah, fasting, etc., all the way through, jihad, inheritance, from the beginning to the end. This is what it is dealing with. Now, the author of a Sunan, his job is to compile as many Sunan. Sunan, which is plural for sunnah, as many sunan as he can. And then he'll mention a chapter. So for instance, he'll say the book of Salah. Then he'll mention chapters in that book. This is the book of the times of Salah. This is the chapter of the time of Fajr, the chapter of the time of Dhuhr, the chapter of the time of Asr, etc. You get the point. And the point here is that the narration he'll mention is going to be the strongest narration in that subject. And he will mention in his book as many said rulings and sunan as he can, whatever the scholars differ on, right? So for instance, one of the things that the scholars have mentioned, the jurists of Islam have mentioned, is not using siwak, not brushing one's teeth, if you're fasting after the sun crosses noon. After noon, after the sun crosses its zenith. Before you use. After, you don't. This is an opinion, okay? It's a claim made by some jurists. Where do they get this from? Well, they get this generally from the narration of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the smell of the stomach of a person who is fasting is more beloved to Allah than the scent of musk. We know this narration, correct? And so they say, when does this smell occur? It occurs most prominently after the first half of the day. Therefore, if a person brushes his teeth, he gets rid of the smell. No, we should keep the smell. This is a weak opinion. It is a weak opinion, but it's an opinion. So what will the scholar who's writing a book on Sunan do? He'll mention that opinion, and then he'll mention the strongest evidence used by jurists as an evidence for that opinion. He's not saying the opinion is correct. He's not even claiming the narration is authentic. He is merely documenting this field, the field of fiqh, the field of ahkam. So, Abu Dawud al-Sijistani, he authors his book as Sunan. Abu Dawud al-Sijistani, one of the most greatest scholars that have ever walked the earth, one of the most prominent students of al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, rather one of the most prominent students of Imam Ahmad as well. He was old enough to have taken from Imam Ahmad as well. Now, Abu Dawud al-Sijistani, he authors his book and he includes narrations. He mentions their chain of narration. Is he saying that every time he documents a narration, is he saying it's authentic? No. No, he's documenting opinions and their evidences. That's it. Doesn't mean everything in the book is authentic. He is going to mention the strongest narration in that field. The strongest narration in that issue might be weak. The strongest narration in that issue might be very weak. We understand that? Therefore, the scholars of hadith have different types of books that they write. This narration we just heard is from Sunan Abi Dawud. Al-Imam al-Nawawi died at what age? Anyone know? Mid-40s? 45. Exactly 45 years old. And he started officially seeking knowledge at the age of 18. He had memorized the Quran, but he hadn't studied yet. 18. That gives him how many years of studying? 26 years roughly, because he went for Hajj with his father. When he's coming back, 19 years old, he started seeking knowledge. About 26 years. 26 years in the world of scholars is a little toddler still. That is in time, okay? Now, he managed to become a major scholar in that time. However, that usually is a very short amount of time, and there's only so much you can do physically in that amount of time. And one of those things is go through every single narration that you use and authenticate it. How impossible would that be? Right? You're writing a book like Al-Majmu', okay? Just to get from the chapters of wudu and tahara and so forth to the chapter of janazah, we've got 10 volumes. That's how big this book is. All right? How many narrations are mentioned in that book? Thousands. How could he possibly have time to authenticate every single narration? And some narrations are so particular that they may take weeks to authenticate and come to a conclusion on. Therefore, he has to rely on the authentication of what? Of others. And two of the major scholars that he relied on their authentication was Abu Dawud al-Sijistani and At-Tirmidhi, rahimahullah. At-Tirmidhi, rahimahullah, is a little bit lax in his authentication. His threshold for authenticity is much lower. It's easier. It's most of the scholars who are moderate would disagree with some of his authentications. And so, as a result of that, the narration we heard yesterday, or the day before, Al-Kayyisu man dana nafsahu, he views this as acceptable. The majority of the scholars of hadith view this as what? Inauthentic. Sunan Abi Dawood is the same thing. He relied on Abu Dawood al-Sijistani, that if Abu Dawood didn't point out that a narration is flawed, he accepts it. And this is due to his experience with Sunan Abi Dawood, but he didn't specialize in the book. And so, weak narrations found their way into his work. But as we said before, yesterday, one of the most beautiful things about Riyadh al-Salihin is that there are no narrations which are agreed upon as being rejected. There are no fabricated narrations. There are no extremely weak narrations. And the next thing is, all of the narrations' meanings are what? Correct. So the narration itself may not be authentic, but the meaning is what? Is correct. This narration is inauthentic. The majority of the Huffaz of Hadith have graded this narration as being da'if, but the weakness is slight. But the meaning, the spirit of the narration, لا يسأل الرجل فيما ضرب امرأته. A man is not to be asked why he has reprimanded his wife by the meaning of the narration. What is the spirit of the narration? The spirit of the narration is the human being, a couple, a man and his wife, they have a right to privacy. Prying into that is not the right of any other person. It is the right of the husband, the right of the wife. If there is a wrongdoing, then the proper channels for that is the court, the Muslim court. They're to be notified and brought into the situation, and they then will investigate what is going on in that household. However, Tom, Dick, and Harry, and the guy walking outside, and the guy, this is none of their business. People have an innate, inherent right to privacy. That is part of their dignity. And a man is the sultan, or the caretaker, and the superior in his household. He has a right to that privacy, and he has a right to that discretion, and a mother with her children, and so forth. Therefore, it is impermissible for a person to pry into those things. And if a person does, they are overstepping their bounds. Why does that fall into the chapter of vigilance of Allah? Is that, as the Prophet said in the narration we took yesterday, min husni islam al-mar' tarkuhu ma la yani. It is of the perfection and the discipline of a man's Islam that he leave off what does not concern him. If a person were to think that there is some kind of abuse or some kind, in this case, they would go to the right channels, or the tribe of the wife, or go to the Muslim court system. They would go through that and make some kind of, these are the ways, the channels to go through that, not seeing the guy down the road, you know what, I heard this and I heard that, and I wonder what they're doing, and I wonder what they're saying. This is not the proper channel, and this is something that a person must be vigilant of. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى بمنه وكرمه وجوده أن يعلمنا ما ينفعنا وأن ينفعنا بما علمنا والله أعلم وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد